This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with another edition of Around the Oval, brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. I am Alex Gleitman, who will be hosting the show, but we bring in a much more important guest, our resident football, even basketball, do everything beat writer, Tony Gerdeman. Tony, thanks for giving us your time. I know you're a very busy man, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for the accolades. Definitely not deserved, but I'll take them because I can't get them on my own podcast.
Well, you know, I'll blame Tom for that one. He doesn't prop you up enough, but I'll give you all the accolades I think you deserve. So you've been a busy man, as I said. Obviously, it's the off season for now Ohio State football and basketball, but the Buckeyes are deep into spring practice. They had a little bit of a hiccup with the COVID-19 monster coming back again a little bit, but it wasn't too bad this time around, just a slight few days, week off or so. And they kind of resumed activity, and now they're out in the field in pads and scrimmaging and things like that. And we were very fortunate that Ohio State started to let some media in to see a couple of the practices end of last week, early this week. You and Tom both got to go to the Woody and check it out. And outside of what you were able to observe, I know you've been hearing a number of things. I've been hearing some stuff. I posted in my A deck yesterday for those who are listening on Wednesday night, 2 days ago, for those who will be listening on Thursday to this. Just some of the things I had been hearing. And Nevada Buck has been absolutely awesome. Just posting everything he's been hearing. So if you're not a member of Buckeye Scoop, I definitely recommend at least giving us a try for 1 month and checking that out, because it seems like almost daily Nevada's dropping nuggets right now. But I want to just talk Ohio State spring ball, and we'll kind of go position by position, just talk about what you saw when you were at practice, what you've been hearing. And there's no bigger storyline for Ohio State than the quarterback position. Justin Fields obviously departing for the NFL. Hopefully he doesn't slide too far down the first round here. I think he'll end up just fine and prove some people wrong in a few years who maybe are going to pass up on him, including my Jets. But quarterback, I mean, it's been JT Barrett. It was Dwayne Haskins. Even though Haskins and Burrow hadn't played that much, you kind of knew that whoever won that quarterback competition was going to be pretty good. And then you had Justin Fields, who, again, was kind of an unknown commodity as far as seeing him actually play, but he was so highly rated coming out of high school. He was such a tremendous athlete that you felt, for Ryan Day to basically sacrifice his whole quarterback room just to get the guy, you felt pretty good that he was going to be a very good player for Ohio State. And he was arguably the best quarterback in school history over a couple of seasons. But now you have three guys who have never thrown a college pass competing for the job in CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, who will both be, I guess, technically redshirt freshmen because last year didn't really count and they didn't play a ton, as well as a true freshman who's enrolled early in Kyle McCord. So, Tony, tell us a little bit about what you saw at practice between those three guys and what you're hearing.
Yeah, well, to clarify, when I was at practice on Friday, we were there for about 23 minutes is what they gave us. I got to see basically just some seam routes from the quarterbacks to the receivers. I really didn't get to watch too much. But the thing that I notice is that they all look similar when they're throwing the ball. The ball looks similar. And I keep going back to when it was Justin Fields and I think Matthew Baldwin competing, and the balls were not similar at all. They were different, and they look different. Justin Fields was a much better ball. It was straighter line. Whereas these three guys, if you didn't know who was throwing it, you probably couldn't guess. And so I think that's a good thing because the throws there, the arms are there. And, you hear something, it's almost like it just depends on the day. One day it'll be Jack Miller. You hear something good about it. The next day it's CJ Stroud. And then somebody's like, but don't sleep on Kyle McCord because he's just a freshman. So he's got this curve that he's behind and also being graded on. And you saw some of the video that was that Tom took on Monday where he threw just a tremendous touchdown pass in the red zone to Jeremy Rucker right on the sideline. And so all of the skill is there. And I while it may be like the biggest story for the Buckeyes in spring and fall camp, to me, it's almost not much of an important thing, if that's strange to say, because whoever wins it will be fine. And I think they have 3 guys who can play. So like whoever comes out of that is going to be a favorite to be all Big Ten silver football. And I'm confident that there is somebody there. I'm confident that there's 2 somebodies there. And when you watch Justin Fields, you're holding your breath. The team is holding its breath that he doesn't get hurt here. Like if that happens, you don't want it to happen, but there is really good depth too. It's just, it's funny that I think since the first time since 1971, the Buckeyes are starting a season with no collegiate passes on their team. And so that's going to be interesting. At this point, I'm giving Ryan Day all of the credit. I just assume he's going to produce a very good quarterback, and maybe we'll get burnt on that this year. I just don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, look, to me, as long as who's ever in there doesn't turn it over at a high clip, the Buckeyes offense is going to move and they're going to do well. It's just, I think it's going to be those few games, maybe during the regular season. And obviously once you get to the postseason, potentially that's when it's going to be a little bit different. But for the majority of the games, it's just going to be kind of protect the football and get it to where it's supposed to be. And the playmakers will make the plays. So I don't know what it's going to look like. We've only had 2 weeks really. So, we talked about this on the board on Wednesday a little bit in my A-Deck thread that, someone said, well, like Stroud hasn't been looking so good. Why isn't he, why is everyone assuming he's going to win the job? Well, this job isn't going to be won in 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a month. I truly think they'll have an idea coming out of spring. Like, okay, this is probably the guy, but I don't really think that's going to be solidified until about 2 weeks before the season, because they're going to want to wait as long as possible, forget the transfer portal stuff and all that, but to make sure that they got the right guy. And there's a whole summer for these guys to improve. And then there's a few weeks in fall camp, and maybe someone like Kyle McCord, who's just getting used to the speed of the game, things slow down a little bit for him by the fall. So what I'm hearing right now is CJ Stroud didn't have the best week last week. Jack Miller had a very good week. This week, I'm hearing CJ Stroud actually is having a very good week. Jack Miller has taken a little bit of a step back. I think you're going to see that a lot. And then with Kyle McCord, it's everyone saying, as far as pure arm strength, the guy's got the best in the room. And I don't think that that's a surprise based on what we saw from all of them coming out of high school. I think with him, it's, again, the game needs to slow down. From what I'm hearing, he's not trusting himself. He's not playing, he's thinking. And once he's able to stop thinking so much and just play and let it rip, I think he's going to find himself in the middle of the competition. But, it'll be interesting to see if they'll have the guts to kind of play a freshman over the other 2 guys who are older than him, because he's going to have to be, to me, the clear cut, no doubt about it choice. I don't know if you feel the same.
No, absolutely. He's going to, I think if they're even, you don't go with him, but he has, because of just what it could also mean with the 2022 class and down the board. It's like, he has to be so far above the other 2 that you can't not go with him. And so, yeah, that's going to take a lot. And what spring is just, it's the first half, the first third of really building up to that freshman season. And as Ryan Day says, spring ball just continues into preseason. And, they're, I think, done with 9 practices now. So 9 of, 40 or so practices, maybe a quarter of the way before Kyle McCord needs to, be able to go. But it will be interesting to see at what point in the season they'll be able to get all 3 in a game. I'd be surprised if it happens that first week, but if it does, I think that's a really good sign for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, for sure. And another position that I got my eye on is running back. It's Trey Sermon ended the season as the clear-cut alpha in that room after J.K. Dobbins held it down and Mike Weber before that. And, Ezekiel Elliott. Ohio State hasn't really had a problem at running back. Last year was definitely a question mark coming into the year, I think a little bit, but Trey Sermon kind of took the reins and ran. It wasn't a normal year, but in the back half of whatever that crazy year was, he kind of took the reins and ran with it. And you saw how much they missed him in the national championship game when he went down after the first series. So you got Master Teague back. Mayan Williams is back. Marcus Crawley, Steele Chambers. And then you bring in 2 really good freshman running backs in Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor. I don't know. Again, it was so limited what you guys got to see, but was there anything with the pecking order of warm-ups or anything like that you got to see with the running backs?
Well, no, not really, because you also had walk-on Xavier Johnson in there as well. And so they were just throwing so many different guys in the drills. I'm fascinated to see how this ends up, because I could see it going any number of ways. However, I do think it starts with Master Teague, and he'll be the guy who starts the season. But as I keep saying, you now have 5 other running backs on this team who saw the job get taken away from Master Teague last year. And so they know it's possible. You hear a lot of you see a lot of the Buckeye fans on the Ask the Insiders board saying that Ryan Day or Urban Meyer never take a job away from the veteran. We saw Trey Sermon go and just snatch it from Master Teague and never give it back until he was injured at Alabama. So I think there's I will be surprised if it's not Master Teague starting the season. I won't be surprised if it's not Master Teague, say, starting in November. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody takes the job, because there's just so much talent, and different guys can do different things. I think everybody loves what they saw from Mayan Williams last year, but it was 10 carries. And we don't really know exactly what he is in terms of, is he a home run hitter, or is he just a change of pace brute? I mean, he's not, I don't even know how to describe him. I think they've got 5 guys who, if you give them 15 carries a game, would, put somewhere between 11 and 1,400 yards on the ground. And my only question would be Evan Pryor, in terms of, he's not ready for that many touches, but there's definitely a role for that guy in terms of swing passes and some just, touches, as I said, a change of pace. But I think the future is clearly Travion Henderson. I just don't know how soon that is. But I mean, I'm looking forward to watching him, because I think you see the film and what he's done, and it's clear he's different than everybody, and he's different. He's you go back and watch J.K. Dobbins Jr. highlights, where he's just clearly, you wonder, is he playing the lowest level of Texas high school football? And Travion Henderson is very similar to that.
Yeah, what I've been hearing pretty much lines up with what you're saying. I think everyone believes Master Teague is going to be is going to be in the backfield when they take the first snap at Minnesota on September 2nd. And I think throughout the year, there's going to be a role for Master Teague in the offense, even if he's not the lead back or the guy getting the most carries. He's a really good pass blocker. He's actually a decent pass catcher. I don't know what, other than running a straight line speed, there's not, he doesn't have a ton of wiggle when he gets the ball, but his hands are decent. And, again, he runs that straight line very, very fast. So if the hole's there and he could go through it, he's got the potential to hit the home run. He works harder than anyone on the team. That's just continuously what I hear. But I have a very good source that just continues to beat the Mayan Williams drum. They think he is going to be the guy who ends up getting the lion's share of the carries. They think they said, this person told me that they don't even let him go full speed at practice because they're scared he's going to hurt people. That's how violently he runs. And I heard the same things about him last year as a freshman. So I think that guy just goes hard. And, can you sustain that for 20 carries a game? I don't know, but they do have Master Teague, and I am hearing really, really good things about Travion Henderson. I think it's just a matter of, like other guys, the speed of the game and slowing down and patience and vision and just getting the feel of things. I think he's going to have a role, but Evan Pryor, I've heard physically, they're not sure he's ready yet, maybe a year with Coach Mick, and then he's ready for a more prominent role, but he definitely could see some action. And then I think Marcus Crawley, I mean, if he could get healthy, fully healthy and full speed, he's really good. Steel Chambers, I'm just hearing it's a case. You got to protect the football. It's just been his problem. And so if he can protect the football, he's looked good. He's had flashes. So it's going to be interesting to see how that room shakes out.
I think the Mayan Williams thing and again, it's 10 carries, but he doesn't get stopped in the backfield. And it reminds me of the way Maurice Claret in 2002 for the Buckeyes would always have to dodge one guy in the backfield before he could get to the line of scrimmage. And he always did it. And the fact that Mayan Williams is so good at getting past the line of scrimmage, getting past the guy who's penetrating and making people look foolish. I think there's so much to like there. And it's amazing how much of an impact he made on everybody who saw him, from not practices, but in the games. And it was just 10 carries. But again, Marcus Crawley, I know he's worked on getting stronger. Tony Alford told a great story, if you got a minute here, about when Marcus Crawley last year, he just kept bothering him. I want to play me. Tony Alford kept telling him, you're not ready. And he was coming back from that ACL tear against Maryland in 2019. And so he finally gets in against Northwestern in special teams, and Clemson, he played special teams. Then he carries the ball in Alabama, gets, doesn't do much, 6 carries for 14 yards. After one of those plays, he comes off to the sideline and he apologized to Tony Alford. And Alfred's like, why are you apologizing? And he said, I'm not ready. You told me I wasn't ready and you were right. And I'm sorry I was bothering you about it. And so they've been working on getting him stronger to help his balance and getting weight on him. But I really like him. The dude averaged 9.5 carries as a freshman, 9.5 yards per carry as a freshman. His last 3 games, he rushed for 180 yards on 14 carries. Like, he's got something. And it was just a rough year for everybody, but maybe most especially for him last year.
Yeah, well, at least it doesn't count against his NCAA clock. So that is a good thing. I'm going to skip over receivers just because, that's a loaded group. I've been hearing that, by far the best group. And a lot of the stuff you may be hearing negatively about the secondary is a product maybe of just how good the receivers are right now. But we will go to tight ends. Jeremy Rucker, we don't need to talk about him. He's awesome. It's just a matter of how many times they throw him the ball the game. But the second tight end, it's interesting. Guy Scott moved over there, or at least temporarily has moved over there. And, I don't know how, and he was a good blocking receiver. Blocking a tight end is a little bit different when you're blocking a 275-pound defensive end who could run a 4.6 potentially. I'm hearing Cade Stover is emerging as the guy for the number 2 tight end job. What are you hearing on that? What have you seen?
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing as well, in terms of Cade Stover is more of a complete tight end like Jeremy Rucker, whereas Scott, I think there's a role for him just flexed out. I don't ever see him this year being on the line. But yeah, I think it's going to be those two. And Rucker and Stover, you can flip them. You can put either one on the line, one either flexed out, whereas Scott, he can only do one thing. And he may do it very well, and he won't have to deal with corners anymore, just dealing with a safety or a linebacker. And I'll take that with that's something he can use to his advantage. But yeah, Rucker and Stover, and then like Joe Royer, he's also more of a flex guy right now because they're working on getting him stronger. And of course, Sam Hart just coming in. It's like, you don't even put that guy on the line for a year, like similar to what they did with, Jeremy Rucker and Royer are very similar, that Royer didn't play much actual tight end. Rucker didn't play much actual tight end in high school. So there's a process there, but it's a position of concern because they do like to play those 2 tight end sets, but Stover's such a good athlete, just a really hard worker. Like, you could ask him to do anything and he's going to do whatever it takes to get it done. And he may not be like, you could ask him to play nose tackle and he would do it. He may not be very good or suited for it, but he's going to give it everything he got. I think he's very well suited to being a tight end. We saw one practice last spring and he was making plays, and that was his first spring practice at tight end. And so now you've got a year where he didn't play last year, really, because he had 3 or 4 guys in front of him. But he's learned, he's watched. You spend a year watching Luke Farrell, you're going to learn a lot, I think. And so just he's got the character that you can't really count out, I think.
Yeah, and that plus Kevin Wilson, I think, is a good combination. So that leads us to the offensive line, the last piece of offense on the offensive side of the ball. Weirdly, like, you lose guys like Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers, and Harry Miller's out for the whole spring. But oddly, I'm not getting a lot of concern from people I'm talking to about that unit. I think people feel really good about the tackles, Nick Petit-Frere and Thayer Munford. I'm actually hearing Munford is like, people just feel like he's like, like the light went on for him last year, I guess, like fully healthy, like just the confidence he got from being fully healthy and having that year. Like, I had people telling me, like, if he came out this year, he would have been like a late round pick, injury concerns about his back and things like that, even though he had such a good year. But I have people saying like they think he could be a first round pick and maybe even a top tackle off the board next year, which is pretty crazy. So I think they feel pretty good about tackle. No concerns, it seems, with Paris Johnson at right guard. They just playing like the 5-star he's supposed to be. And, and then it's just figuring out how do the pieces fit the rest of the way. Is it DeJuan Jones getting in there? I've been hearing great things about my guy from Brooklyn, Matt Jones. I know people are not happy to hear this because Harry Miller didn't maybe have the best year, but I'm hearing that it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Harry Miller is gonna have a spot, whether it's center or guard. And I think what a lot of people don't know is the injury he's recovering from now, the surgery he had, actually he played a lot of the year with, and he didn't know, and the team didn't know. And that would explain a lot, I think. So, Tony, how do you, based on what you've seen and heard, I know you just got to talk to Greg Studrawa and Paris Johnson and Thayer Munford and Nick Petit-Frere. How are you seeing the offensive line unit shaken out?
Well, that was one of the things I asked Studrawa about Harry Miller. I said, is he one of your best 5? Do you expect him to be one of your best 5 this fall? He said you'd be very surprised if he's not. And so it's just a matter of, is he your left guard or is he your center? And the fact that they've got Paris Johnson at right guard tells me that Harry Miller might stay at left guard, but that's going to depend on Matt Jones, who physically can do everything. It was just the little things that were holding him back. And I think that light has come on for him and it needs to continue to brighten. And it sounds like it will. Getting these reps at center this spring is huge for him. And it's huge for Studrawa and Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day to get an idea of, okay, we know now what Matt Jones can do at center. We believe we know what Harry Miller can do. You got to see him against Michigan State. There are some bad snaps, but he did calm down in that game and played well enough. So at least they have something to go on. And then, of course, they'll probably continue to battle in the fall. So I think the top 5, I think it's pretty set with Thayer Munford and Harry Miller and Matt Jones, wherever they are, left guard or center, Paris Johnson at right guard, and Nick Petit-Frere at right tackle. I think they're going to be very, very good. And Studrawa couldn't say enough about Josh Fryer as well, redshirt freshman playing guard right now, who could play tackle. I thought he was going to play I thought he was going to start last year against Michigan State because Ohio State was releasing so many videos where Josh Fryer was out there with the 1s and stuff, and 1s and 2s. And Max Ray comes in and plays really well against the Spartans. But all of these guys, I think they're going to do well. Thayer Munford, you mentioned. I've got an NFL guys telling me they see him as a guard based on what they've seen so far. And I think that's another reason why Thayer Munford has decided to come back, because he does want to be the top tackle and he wants to prove that he is a tackle. And you watch him and you see how well he played last year. It's like, well, why isn't that guy an NFL tackle? Why is he a guard? I mean, he looks pretty good to me. And it's the best pair of bookends in the nation. I have to, I don't know every team, but I can't imagine a better pair than these than Nick Petit-Frere and Thayer Munford. And I said on Buckeye Weekly to Tom Orr, I said, this is the best pair of offensive tackles Ohio State has had since Orlando Pace and Corey Stringer back in 1994.
Yeah, and the group is deep. I mean, Stud talked about that with you guys, yes. And I think it's the deepest O-line I can remember in quite some time. And when it comes to not just capable bodies, but talented, I mean, a lot of these guys can start on other Big Ten teams right now. So it should be a good year for the offensive line, which should help a new quarterback and, a unproven running back room outside of Master Teague. So I think that's a great thing that Ohio State has going for them. Let's flip over to defense. We'll skip over the D line, talk about that another time, but more so because of position battles and with linebacker. I mean, they're replacing their top 4 linebackers. Ohio State is Pete Werner, Baron Browning, Tuff Borland, and Justin Hilliard are all gone. I assume all of them will at least have a spot on a practice squad probably come the fall, if not being on the active roster. But what are you hearing, or what are your thoughts at linebacker based on what you've seen and who you've been talking to?
One of the things that I'm not hearing much of is what's going on at Sam as a, with just, is it an actual linebacker? You hear more about the safeties that can come down, like the Craig Young. You hear more about the bullet than we are the Sam right now, which is something that I think people have been waiting a couple of years for. So that to me has been the most interesting thing, that just the Craig Young dynamic. He's got Ronnie Hickman behind him. Ryan Batch, a walk-on, is there as well. And then Court Williams, once he's healthy this summer, will move into that slot as well. And it just feels to me that they're moving in that direction, because when you talk about a physical Sam linebacker, like the only guy that has maybe been mentioned has been Kayvon Pope, like an actual linebacker, and he's been mentioned more inside than outside. So I couldn't even tell you who an outside linebacker is for sure on this team, other than the safeties that I just mentioned. Craig Young being the linebacker last year, has dropped weight, playing some safety, and flexing back and forth. So to me, it feels like they're moving towards that 4-2-5 more and more. I don't know what we'll see in the spring game, because they don't like to show a lot in the spring. So maybe they'll, they're versatile linebackers, but there's not many of them right now, because you lost Mitchell Melton, he's out, lost Dallas Gant, he's out. So you're going to see, I think, quite a few walk-ons in the spring game, or a whole lot of nickel.
Yeah, I think we all were like really excited about this bullet position when Jeff Hafley came in before the 2019 season, and it's all we were hearing about. Brendan White is going to be the bullet, and Justin Wentz behind him, and they're looking great, and they're working at safety, and they're working at linebacker. And then we never saw it really, because Pete Werner was so good in coverage that it allowed Ohio State to play their base defense, whatever, like 99% of the time or whatever it was. And I think this year, because of the personnel they have, I think you are finally going to see that position used. And what I've been hearing, just the themes, is just versatility. That's what they're looking for in recruiting. It's what they're looking for when the guys get developed, and what they're looking for to implement on the field. And I think opponent, situation, down and distance, score, like it's going to dictate what personnel they use on the field. I think, to your point, it's basically going to be the same system. It's just going to be, is it more of a 4-3 at times with, let's just call it a Pope, Gant, Mitchell type of lineup? You can throw Eichenberg and Simon and whoever else in there. Or is it going to be that more Jim Haycock 4-2-5 with the bullet, as it's called now, used to be called a star, Tyler Moeller type of, Jamel Hines type of role, that safety linebacker hybrid role. And I do think that they are going to use both. I think you're going to see a lot of different looks. I think while the back seven talent may not be as good on paper as it was last year, I think it just seems like they feel better about the personnel that they have this year. I don't know why it seems that way, but that's just what I'm gathering. They feel like there's just more talent, more capable bodies. And more is known, I think, about some of these guys, where they didn't have the spring last year to evaluate that. So that's what I'm taking away. I don't know if you feel the same. I see you nodding your head, but
yeah. And one of the things that with Ryan Day, whenever there are certain guys he likes to talk about or will mention, and he kind of perks up. And one of those guys is Lathan Ransom. Whenever he talks about Lathan Ransom, now Ransom and Marcus Williamson are going to be in a position battle to see who can come out of there. But yeah, with the pass defense overall, the secondary, all of it, I expect it to be better because there are more options, and they just felt they didn't have any of those options last year. They didn't have enough guys they trusted, and we'll get to the secondary, but there's just more guys they trust this year and know that they'll have at least an answer on by September. They didn't have any answers. They couldn't provide enough questions to get the answers because they had no spring, and games just weren't allowing them to play more guys, and you had COVID costing some guys backups games and couldn't even there was a game last year where we kept hearing about this is going to be Legend Cavazos's game, and then I think he had COVID or somebody else had COVID, and so you couldn't do it. And so there's just so many different things that screwed up last year, and they're trying to catch up this year.
Yeah. And the last topic I wanted to cover was the secondary, because it's been shredded by the fans over and over and over again. Probably us too at many times, and rightfully so. But Ryan Day made the changes from a staff perspective that he thought he needed to make to get that right. It's Kerry Combs letting him coordinate the defense, which is his job, and focus less on the secondary, and letting Matt Barnes coach up those secondary guys within the defense that Kerry Combs is coordinating. So, I am hearing cornerback, they feel pretty good about Sevyn Banks being that guy this year. I think opposite, the hope is that, he's out the rest of the spring, and Cam Brown is out the spring with his injury recovery. But I think they believe both guys will be healthy and will be ready to play at a high level in the fall. I'm hearing Legend Cavazos is emerging as that third guy so far this spring. But to your point, I think you're going to see a lot of Lathan Ransom and Marcus Williamson. Josh Proctor's moved to the deep safety spot. And while I still think there's a few things they need to work on with him about angles and just tackling instead of going for a big hit always, I think he'll get there, and I think he's going to be a really good player. What are your thoughts on the secondary? Is this a unit that you expect to, I don't want to say improve because it's really hard to not improve, but to play at a level that is acceptable at Ohio State?
Well, that acceptability meter changes because, this is offensive football, the era of offensive football. So if is 20 points per game acceptable? 10 years ago, no, but now it is. Yeah. Especially with the Ryan Day offense. But I do expect things to improve. I really like Matt Barnes, the way he's very straightforward. Not necessarily gives a bunch of information to the media, but Ryan Day really, really likes him, and the players really like him. I think it was Josh Proctor who said that Barnes explains stuff to them in a way that's easier to understand than Kerry Combs. And I think that's a product of Barnes having more time to do that than Combs does as a defensive coordinator last year. And, nobody had time for anything last year. Just it wasn't easy for anybody to learn last year. But so with Barnes doing what he does, I think the more time you give him to do all of this teaching, and I think that's going to help Josh Proctor. Proctor is saying the game is slowing down for him. He's dropped weight so that he can be faster and cover more ground. So I think I keep telling people, go back to when Josh Proctor came to Ohio State. He was brought in as this deep cover Malik Hooker type. Now he gets here and he has a couple of big hits on quarterbacks, and people immediately think he's a box safety. But he's a guy that has range, teammates compared him to Malik Hooker, and the ability to find the ball and the anticipation. So that's all in there. It's just a matter of Barnes maybe getting it out and getting it to it, putting in its best usage. So I like him. I think Jansen Dunn, to me, I'm really excited to see him. It probably won't be this year, but next year that job is going to be wide open if Proctor decides, not to use that free year. And then, Lathan Ransom, Marcus Williamson. I know people are concerned about Marcus Williamson based on last year, but he's also a guy that has said that it's hard to learn without making mistakes, and he's been able to see what he did wrong last year. Now go and apply it. But I think I agree with you that from what I've told Sevyn Banks, there's really no concern. And I think there's enough guys to figure out what you're going to do with that other spot. And remember, if Sean Wade wasn't here last year, it would have been Cam Brown starting at outside corner. I just don't know how good he's going to be coming back from that Achilles, that first year and the first few months. I'm sure he'll be better in December than he will be in September. I honestly don't know what to expect from him. So I don't know if you can expect much from him, but Legend Cavazos has all of the athleticism you could want. And Denzel Burke, that's the true freshman. Denzel Burke has been talked about in terms of just innate ability is one of the words one of the coaches use. Tremendous feet. Hasn't played the position a lot in high school. Was mostly a receiver, and then would probably play corner because he's just the craziest athlete on the team. And yet he gets to Ohio State and boom. And I think J.K. Johnson and Jordan Hancock are going to have to do some catching up. And I would not be shocked if a freshman corner starts for Ohio State this year at some point. I didn't know it was going to be Denzel Burke though. And I'm not saying it is, but he's certainly starting out well. And then Cameron Martinez, who knows, he's playing all over the place, and he's a guy we can't sell, shortchange yet either.
Yeah, there's a lot of bodies that are very talented kids. And, I just have to believe that, all the fans are going crazy about the staff changes and the personnel. They didn't bring in anyone in the portal, and Hancock and Johnson aren't here early, and it's going to be a disaster. But like, there's nobody who wants to win more and nobody who wants the defense to improve more than Ryan Day and Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes. Like, especially Ryan Day. Forget the other guys. Ryan Day, like, nobody wants us to work more than him. Like, you think he likes getting his butt whooped in the national championship game? I mean, you saw how he handled coming off that Clemson game the year before. And so, he's not just going to sit back and take it, right? Like, that guy is making decisions that he feels are going to, the pressure's on him. He's the one who's got to win games. He's the one getting paid the big bucks. So if he feels those are the right moves, like, who are we to say they're not the right moves? And so I just have a feeling that things are going to work out a lot better. To your point, Ohio State's not going to hold teams to like 14 and under points this year. Like, if you hold 20 to 24 point range on average, you're going to do pretty good. If you can't score 24 points in today's college football, you don't deserve to win a national championship. That's just look at the last few national championships or the big playoff games. I think Bill Bank did a great research on it. And, the Magic, you definitely have to get over 30. There's no doubt about it. And if you hit that 40 plus number, you're cruising. You're doing pretty well. You got to be able to hold guys under 30, and you got to be able to score 30. So it's just a new age of football. I think they're going to figure it out. It's not always going to be pretty. There's definitely going to be some growing pains, but you have to hope that I think the talent and the system that they have on the offensive side of the ball carries them a little bit in the first half of the year while they get their feet under them. So it will be interesting to see how the rest of spring goes. As we said, there's summer off-season conditioning, there's fall camp. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to hopefully get you guys into some more practices and read your reports and hear what you're hearing and talk to some of our sources and continue to report that on Buckeye Scoop. So Tony, thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing everything. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to hearing more from you soon on the Buckeyes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We will be in practice later. One more time before spring game is what we've been told. So that'll be good. And
you guys will be in the house for the spring game, I think, right? That's
should be. That's the plan.
Yeah. So it'll certainly be exciting. Definitely stay tuned to Buckeye Scoop for more on Ohio State throughout the spring. And definitely if you're not subscribed yet, I really, again, I'm not saying do an annual. We don't have free trials or anything like that, but it's, what does Tom like to say? The price of a crappy pizza joint pizza for 1 month. So give it a try, see how you like it. Feel free to message any of us with any personal questions. If you don't feel like posting something on the board, we'd be happy to answer them and look forward to seeing you all on Ask the Insiders. This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.